So the first question is, please describe one or two qualities that you would bring to this position.
Definitely. So last semester, our school, Canisius College, became a Strengths Quest school, which has been a really cool experience because I've heard so much about it and I've always wanted to participate in it. So um, what was really neat was I got my results and I was really excited about a couple of them because it kind of explained a lot about me, I think. My top one was connectedness, and then one of my other ones was a ranger, and I thought that kind of really made a lot of sense with me. So connectedness, is the idea that we're all kind of part of a larger picture, and we should kind of be working to help each other where we can. And I really think that plays a role in an area coordinator position or in residence life because we're working with RA staff, we're working with other students in a residence college. So you're all trying to create that community. An example that I showed with connectedness was actually last week with my graduate assistantship. I work as an outreach coordinator with the counseling center. So I do a lot of initiatives trying to bring the counseling center around campus because, sometimes it's tough for students to come in. So one of the initiatives that I kicked off the semester with was a random acts of kindness program, which is really cool. And it was a really simple idea. So we I hosted a table with a couple students that we found from other groups. And what we did was we just had candy and little cards that just said "Pay it forward." So we had a table in the library, during class changes and stuff like that. And it was just kind of passing them out and just kind of talking. And so many students were like, "Do I have to pay for this? Like, it's free?" It was a really cool experience because no one was really expecting it. And it really made a lot of students' days, and I ended up having one student I'd never met before sat down with me and just started talking about how that made her day, and it was a great start to the semester, just like one little piece of candy. Um,
Hmm.
so I thought that was a really cool way to show that connectedness. Another one of my strengths was a ranger, which I think complements that really well because the ranger kind of tries to find that path of least resistance. They see a lot of different information and they're trying to put it all together in a way that makes sense and put order and structure to it. So, an example of that was this past summer, I served as a hall director at Cornell University Summer College Program. And one of the first tasks we had, me and five other of my interns, also hall directors, was at the end of the day after we had our own training, we had to create the training for the RAs that would come in a couple days. So it was a lot of we would learn things and then we'd have to go and figure out a way to teach it a few days later. So a comprehensive training schedule. So, we'd all sit together at the end of a long day of training and trying to figure it out. And it became kind of a stress because we were like, oh my gosh, we have so many different topics to cover. How are we going to arrange that? So me, like, I love treating things like that like a puzzle. So I sat down with all the topics that we decided on and kind of organized them. Okay, all these topics are very similar. So we do a day on this. These are different. This one is more active. This one, is a little more, just listening and lecture style. So balancing that. So it's kind of doing that. And it was funny because all my co-interns were very impressed that I was able to organize all that and kind of create that flow chart.
Hmm. Great. And what are your strongest leadership skills?
Definitely. So I believe my leadership style is greatly influenced by the concept of servant leadership, which I think played a role from my many years during my undergraduate Alpha Phi Omega. There I learned so much about what it is to be a leader and then to give back. And when I learned about servant leadership in my graduate studies, it kind of made sense putting those two things together. So I'd never seen that before. So basically, with servant leadership, it's all about, I think it's less to do with directing others and more to do with serving them. So it's listening intensively to the needs of students or whoever you're supervising, and trying to work with their needs. College is a time I feel when students are trying to figure themselves out and they should be encouraged to share their ideas and their questions and everything. And it's important to create that environment. And I think that's usually done through establishing rapport with them and creating those relationships. So when you take the time to get to know a student and get the student to know you, you're establishing this relationship where you learn how each other work and you kind of humanize each other. It's not just that supervisorial student role. It's kind of, all right, so we know how each other work, we know what the expectations are, and going from there. And I think along those lines, being a servant leader is kind of being an advocate for the students too. So, college once again is a time where they should be encouraged to share their ideas. So, being there to hear, be that sounding board, and then being able to help them with that, whatever it is, whether it's an issue or whether they're nervous about a job interview or something like that, like being able to help them and
Mhm. Great.
advocate for them. And I think that's an important leadership style is have room to grow and develop, learn from challenges, to grow from mistakes, and all that. This summer when I was at Cornell with my summer college students, we had two different staff that were working together. We had the four summer RA staff, and then we had a staff of programming coordinators, so all student staff, and they all worked very closely together. And very early on in the summer, a handful of my student staff came to me, kind of giving hesitations about the programming staff. So saying like, they were being kind of unrealistic in their expectations or kept forgetting to make purchases for their programs and events. And it was me helping them navigate those, peer-to-peer conversations between them and encouraging that. And then, unfortunately, throughout the summer, it ended up kind of getting worse and started impacting the roles of both of them. And some of the other students would be going to the other supervisors, and they were at the point where I was at earlier because it took them a while to come on. So
Mhm.
I sat down with the other supervisors and I was like, hey everyone, this is actually an issue that's coming up very frequently. I started hearing about it earlier, trying to work with them, but I think it's more serious than what we thought. And it took some convincing with the other staff or the other interns I was working with, but we ended up having a mediation between the staff. We had representatives from each of them. And, at that point, we had only had a week or two left of the summer, but in that week or two, it made so much difference. And talking with the student staff after, they were so appreciative, being able to voice their concerns to each other, having that mediation there was so helpful. And it really made a difference. So it was kind of working there to advocate for them and listening what they want and working from there. And that completely changed the rest of the summer. And we were able to finish strong, which was really cool.
Right. Great. What approaches might your supervisor use while working with you that would bring out the best in you?
Definitely. I think what I look for in a supervisor is someone who can guide me in what their vision is, but gives me the opportunity and the room to do the work and bring my own spin to it, bring my own sense of that character, that creativity. Because I believe I'm a very creative thinker, and I thrive in an environment where I have resources that I can use and access, but then from there, being able to just expand and kind of grow from there. Um, and then having the opportunity with those resources, being able to touch base and communicate and be like, do you believe I'm on the right track? Do you think this is the vision you had versus my vision? Um, this past year, I've held an internship at the University of Buffalo in their Office of Assessment office, which has been a really neat experience in a different part of student affairs because it's very much analytical stuff, numbers, traditional stuff you wouldn't think to be creative, but my supervisor worked with me to kind of find that balance between the analytics and the creative side. So one of my major projects has been taking data from students who graduated in the class of 2015 and it's their senior destination survey. So what jobs did they end up with? Where are they? Did they continue on to graduate school? And it has all these numbers, which could be very boring to someone else, but it was my responsibility to make it into infographics. kind of going from there. So she told me, she said, this is your project for the semester. Do it however you see fit. And from there, it's like, all right, well, I'm going to collect the data this way. I'm going to analyze it this way. And I'm going to, and it was a really cool opportunity because I was able to see that start to finish project um,
Right.
in a way that kind of brought together a bunch of different things. And my supervisor was there to help me, whenever I had the questions and was able to encourage me to keep going forward with that.
Hmm. Awesome. What was the most useful criticism that you've ever received?
Definitely. It was a conversation I had with my graduate assistantship supervisor at the end of my first year last year. And it's kind of funny because it kind of goes back to what two qualities I'd bring to the role, the connectedness and the arranger. So the connectedness is all about seeing the big picture, and I think the arranger is all about organizing all the little things. So while I think those are my two greatest strengths, I think that it's sometimes finding the balance and swinging the pendulum one way or the other. So in my first year, at the end, we were having that conversation of it's so great that you can, organize and plan all these events or you have these great ideas, but sometimes one event will swing this way, the other event will swing that way. So it was definitely, spending the summer thinking about that and coming back this year and taking the time to say, okay, so, when I did this event last year, I was a little more big picture, swinging around to the other side. Where can I find that balance? And in that role with the counseling center, there's one event that I plan every semester. There's stress less days, which are really fun because it's bringing in massage therapists, therapy dogs, coloring, stuff like that. And it's been nice because that's been a repeated event every semester. So I've been able to see how, in the first year, the first two were a little rough because I was focusing too much on big picture over the specific. And then this year I had one back in October and it was able, I think the event ran smoothly, was really great because I was able to strike that balance.
Hmm.
I'm excited to see what that same event will be next month, but it's definitely working to sit back and be like, okay, I may be focusing too much time on this part and going backwards.
Right. Okay. Um, Describe the ways that you've demonstrated to students that you're available to them.
Definitely. So with the summer when I was a hall director, I made sure to establish those relationships with my student staff from the beginning. So I wanted to make it clear that I was there for them, kind of going back to the servant leadership. I was there to work with them, figure out what ways they work best, and kind of find that medium. So, I utilized the training time the first couple days and then throughout the summer to get to know them. Those first one-on-one ones that you have. There's no shop talk. It was strictly tell me about your life, and they're sitting there thinking like, all right, why are we not talking about, expectations by that? But it's to get to know them, what their work style is, everything like that. And our first night as a staff, when I went over my staff expectations with them, I, engaged them in an activity where I had them fill out expectations for me. And I did it on a giant butcher sheet of paper and I told them, they can do it. I left for 15 minutes so they can have that space, creative space to think. And it was on a butcher paper, and I said I would post it on my wall in my office every day so I would see it. So, they came up with things like answer within 24 hours, which is fair. Being available when they need to, come to their events that they have, always have chocolate on the desk, stuff like that. But I thought that was really helpful because that they seemed kind of taken aback that I was asking them for their opinion and what they wanted of me. So it was kind of that was kind of a really neat first bonding experience we had.
Hmm.
Um, Another challenge that I had with creating accessibility with students is once again with my outreach position with the counseling center. Because when I started the position, there's no direct student interaction. I don't have a student staff below me. All the outreach that I do, I have to create those relationships with the students. So that was something my supervisor told me about in our first meeting. So, when the semester kicked off and all the students came, I made at that point to, go into the club rooms, go into the Senate office, go into the programming board office, the To Write Love on our armed organizations like
Hmm.
Psychology Club. just introduce myself and establish those roles. And now going into the last semester in graduate school, I'm having students reach out to me now, and it's kind of been neat seeing that transition of me reaching out to them to having them come back and now saying, hey, can we collaborate with the counseling center and do XYZ event,
Mm-hmm.
which is really neat.
Yeah, that's great. All right, so my last question is, what questions do you have for me?
Sure. So, what type of community do you believe exists on the campus? How would you describe it, and how do you think students would describe